Welcome back, listeners of the Last of the Action Heroes podcast network. I am now with Katie Geilenkirchen for our fifth consecutive recording. And today
Hello,
we have a
hello.
special treat.
We do. Point Break.
Point Break. Did you enjoy it?
So it's a 1991 film, and I couldn't recall the last time I'd seen it. So I watched it yesterday, and I didn't recall a lot from it, but it was, how can you go wrong with the national treasure that is Patrick Swayze?
Right.
I very much miss him, and he's just such a joy. And so he was, coming off Dirty Dancing and Ghost and Roadhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're kind of at this time, Keanu was
He was a
not
nobody.
famous. He was just, and Bill and Ted, I think, is probably it.
Yeah, he was in a bunch of really terrible movies. Well, they weren't terrible per se. He was just terrible in them. He was in Bram Stoker's Dracula, and he was just horrible.
Right. But he wasn't well known yet because Speed wasn't until '94, and I think that was
he was
a big break. Yeah,
he was a budget comedian and bit part dramatic actor. Because I remember him from Dangerous Liaisons, where he was supposed to play a French knight, and he just sounds like a Californian
surfer dude. He does sound like this movie is kind of perfect for him. It's odd that he plays the FBI agent, but yeah, such a fun movie. Yeah, you can't go wrong watching Point Break.
No, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I was watching this movie ready to knock it. I was watching it ready to just, well, it's 1991 and no, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
It's not without problems, but it is quite good.
By modern standards, it's just flawless.
It is
because it has tremendous pace, and the cinematography is amazing. The stunts are fantastic. The acting is good.
It is, and a really
the
low
music
budget.
Is good.
Yeah,
the script is good.
Yeah.
The dialogue is good. The cast is great. This is a perfect movie. I love this film.
I don't know if I would say it was a perfect movie, but it's pretty good. And according to IMDb, its ratings, it's a 7.2, which is pretty high.
Yeah,
it's hard to get beyond into the eights. I think it's pretty hard to do, but yeah, a 7.2 out of 10 is pretty darn good.
Yeah. So here we have Kathryn Bigelow's first major Hollywood movie. She'd done stuff before, right?
I didn't even know.
You didn't know.
I wasn't really familiar
with her. The great
with her.
Kathryn Bigelow, who has won everything.
I only knew of her from her later work.
Okay.
Like The Hurt Locker and stuff like that. I didn't realize until I rewatched it yesterday, and that you had pointed out that she was the director of it. So good for her.
Well, I was a big fan of Near Dark because I was a big it's a horror movie. It's a vampire movie. That's your werewolf.
Apologies. They're actually in their kennels. They're usually quiet. So apologies.
Well,
there must be somebody. Yeah.
I'm sure my cats will respond in kind in a few seconds. But no, I was a big fan of Near Dark because I knew about it from because throughout the 80s I read the magazine Fangoria, which was like a horror magazine, and so she was really celebrated in that because she turned out a great movie, but also because she kind of gave a new and exciting twist to the genre, and she does the same with this film, and she's done it with every other film. It's I suppose that's what makes Kathryn Bigelow unique. She can hang with the best of them. That's why she's won everything, because she didn't win it because she was a woman. She won it because she's a great director. In a time when forced acceptance of women wasn't a thing, when women being pushed to the forefront, even though they don't really deserve it, wasn't a thing. Although you can argue that for the Oscar, because Tarantino really deserved that.
Which movie did she win the Oscar for? Hurt Locker?
Yeah, Hurt Locker.
Okay.
And she was up against Tarantino's war movie with Brad Pitt.
Oh, I would have given it to Hurt Locker too. If it was
really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah. So anyway, this
Tarantino doesn't agree.
Of course he doesn't. But I mean, so
He thinks
1991.
Inglorious Bastards is his best work. So if he's ever going to get an Oscar, it should have been for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, it does have great performances, though.
But that's it. I'm sure it does. But that's anyway.
Neither here nor there. Well, we're talking Catherine Bigelow versus Tarantino here. Two brilliant directors,
Indeed.
each in their own right.
Exactly.
And I think Catherine Bigelow's career has been marred by James Cameron, the way Tarantino's career has been hampered by Harvey Weinstein.
I don't think Catherine Bigelow's been marred at all, in any way.
A lot of people have said, well, she did her best stuff when she was being produced by her then husband, Cameron.
Yeah.
And so they're always going to say, well, he had because he's a complete control freak, they're always going to say, well, he had a hand in that.
Well, it's just she had a bigger opportunity, probably. I mean, there's more money I can see it, but I don't think anything was marred. I guess I haven't heard that, but I'm not like Catherine Bigelow fangirl necessarily. I do think she's a great director.
Oh, you are after this movie, though.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of, it's crazy to me now. Like, so 1991 was over 30 years ago.
Right.
So how does that sit with you, Zico? You feeling young?
I felt, when I watched the movie again, I felt intensely nostalgic.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're vintagers now. We're like vintage.
I suppose.
Yes.
Well, this movie changed my life, though.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you a surfer? Do you surf or skydive or anything?
Yes, both. And this movie galvanized me into both.
So speaking of which, that's really interesting. I mean, I read a quick little trivia that, we'll get on the cast, but I literally could go on and on and on about Patrick Swayze and how amazing he is in every way. But what can he not do? What can Patrick Swayze not do? Because he did his own.
I can't think of anything.
I mean, he can literally do everything. He did his own because he's very skilled at skydiving. So all the scenes are him.
Yeah. Everything is him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he worked tirelessly for this movie. He believed in it.
Yeah.
And it shows.
Martial arts, dancing, skydiving, surfing, everything. What can he not?
Swayze knew he had to carry it. He knew because he knew Keanu was new to leading roles. So
I gotta say, Gary Busey was pretty good.
Yeah, this was
I don't expect much.
This was vintage Gary Busey.
Yeah,
Gary Busey not phoning it in.
Yeah, I was like,
this was Lethal Weapon level Gary Busey. We got.
It was good. He was good. And Lori Petty. She's so Lori Petty, character actor. Kind of forgot she was in this, but she's beautiful in this.
Those cheekbones.
Beautiful.
Those big blue eyes.
Yeah, her eyes are just for days. So good cast. Also, nice little cameo, sort of. I mean, he wasn't famous.
Anthony Kiedis, huh?
Anthony Kiedis. Actually, I was like, when was Under the Bridge? It might
Rocky
have been
Jr.
Rocky Jr.
Yes, he's Rocky Jr. in Rocky 2. He's the baby. Seriously.
No, he's not. That was
Anthony
Sylvester's
Kiedis.
Own child. It's not Anthony Kiedis.
There was an Anthony Kiedis in Rocky somewhere. And he's also in Fist, I think.
He might have been. He's not in Rocky anywhere. The baby is Stallone's own kid in Rocky 2.
Oh, that's
Sergio.
Sage. Or is that Sergio?
Sergio, yeah.
That's the paraplegic one, right?
I think
or artistic or whatever he is.
Yeah. But yeah, Anthony
that
Kiedis,
nobody knows about, that nobody ever sees.
Right. But Anthony Kiedis, I loved the Red Hot Chili Peppers at that time.
Still do.
But no,
I don't
Chili
like
Peppers.
Anthony Kiedis much because he's a creep, but I do love the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
This was a perfect role for him. He plays one of the scudsy, biker surfers, which I'd like to understand more about that Venn diagram. Bikers and surfers. I didn't know that was a thing. Did you?
No, I think they had to somehow differentiate your basic surfer dude from what they were doing.
Yeah, like the meth heads.
So they had to have some kind of Nazi kind of surfer element. So they gave them biker alter egos or something.
Yeah, maybe it's just my ignorance about California surfers. But I was like, that seems like an odd combo. But
California surfers are a bunch of hippies.
which is what Swayze's group is. They're
Yeah, so
total
that's
hippies.
that's your
Yeah.
typical California
Yeah.
surfer.
But we
I
learned
know
from the
many of
movie.
them.
We do know from the movie that
They're
they
all tree
are,
hugging hippies.
well, not these biker ones. They aren't.
No,
They're
but
like meth
they're
heads.
but they're contrivance to have bad guys.
Yes.
And they're
But so
also
we
the red
learned,
herring. Because the first half
indeed.
of the movie,
Mhm.
we're kind of getting into the plot. The plot is young FBI guy joins the bureau, is paired up with old guy Gary Busey. Old guy Gary Busey has a theory about a bunch of series of bank robbings that have taken place, guys who have never been caught, and he says they're surfers. And he has no real basis. He just has a suspicion. But of course, Johnny
Well-
Utah, the new kid, is out to prove himself. He's a frustrated American football athlete who injured his knee, and now he needs something else to sink his teeth into. He's really a kind of like a frustrated go-getter kind of guy. It's kind of like he's your typical workaholic. The guy
this
who's
is his
so
first-
obsessed with his work, he doesn't really live.
Which is also kind of a cliche for FBI, undercover FBI agents.
Sure, they're all
But
obsessed.
It's the old story. It's not a new story in that the pairing of a newbie, up and coming FBI agent with the old, been around the block.
And
So
of
that's-
course, Catherine Bigelow gives that thing a little twist.
Of course. So Busey is Pappas.
Mhm.
He's the veteran agent paired with Johnny Utah, Keanu.
Yep.
And the bank robber, he does have hunches. So all the other FBI people give Pappas a hard time about his theory.
Another cliche.
Yeah, indeed. But there is something there. It's like based on like tan lines and wax being like carnauba, like the surfboard wax. There were a few things that he kind
Yes.
of, it's always
And-
in the summertime. The bank job, these jobs are always done in the summer. So
Exactly. And this is where everything gets a kind of FBI feel, because FBI people are basically number crunchers and they would notice stuff like that. They're more scientific. So they would look over footage and say, hey, he has a tan line. Why would he have a tan line? He must be at the beach a lot. What beach would he be at? And then they have like, all these other little details they find at the crime scene. And it's like, oh, we found sand. Well, what's the composition of this sand? And it goes to the lab and it goes through the bureaucracy. And so I found that very well thought out. I find the entire movie quite clever in that way.
Yeah, I mean, and from a technology perspective, it probably was pretty cutting edge in 1991. But yeah,
Sure.
even like they're taking mineral like sand, like hair samples from people because they say that these surfers are territorial. And so they could narrow down the beach that these guys, I mean, this is a little far-fetched, but they're like, let's narrow down which beach
Mhm.
these bank robbers are surf in or at,
Sure.
by what toxins would be available in their hair. So they go and like cut hair samples and miraculously narrow down to one beach that they think. And it is that beach, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. And well, okay, you can get into surfer culture and whether this movie actually captures surfer culture. It doesn't, but it still makes for a good story. So they do need to have certain cultural elements.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the story won't work and the detective part won't work. But, I enjoyed it for what it was. And, well, you could say, surfers aren't really that territorial. They're, much more easygoing. They're, the only territorial bit would be keeping out the kooks, which is basically, that's something you see in the movie where a guy tries to surf and he fails miserably and almost drowns, and a real surfer comes to save him and berates him after that. That's stuff that's happened to me. That's normal. That's what all serious surfers do. Just like the scene where you have like the little kid in the store when Johnny buys his board, and the kid goes, well, it's starting kind of late, but hey, I hope you stick with it. And he's like, what do you mean late? I'm 25. And it's like, yeah, well, most kids start when they're 9. I started late, but
I recognize that kid from Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
There you go.
Did you recognize that kid?
Yeah, although he just looks kind of like every California kid you've ever seen in a movie, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the person, to your point, so Johnny Utah is from Ohio. He was like a football star.
Yes, his name is Utah, but he's from Ohio.
Johnny Utah. I mean,
Yeah, the
now that
name
is
is
a
kind
made-up
of, well,
name.
okay.
Yeah,
He sounds like a comic book, right?
it does for
Yeah.
sure. Now, my biggest, I don't know. So he doesn't know how to surf, and he learns how to surf by going because he has to be, Gary Busey's not going to do it, the 50-year-old guy,
Nope.
or however old he is.
Although that's fairly realistic because there are a lot of old geezers in the water who've been surfing since the 50s.
That's true, but
So it
Gary
wouldn't be
Busey
strange to see a guy like Gary Busey out there, but he'd have to be good, and that's the problem here.
So let's have this 25-year-old, like new, straight from the academy, learn how to surf, and he doesn't.
It's kind of 21 Jump Street, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good show. So Lori Petty's character is the one who saves him and is like, you have no business. You're gonna, she does berate him, but then.
And then he latches onto her. He starts to stalk her. He starts to, look into her past. He finds something to latch onto. It's like, oh, her parents got killed. Oh, I can use that. So he's like completely immoral, and just uses this woman's frailty and vulnerability against her, basically to use her to get into the surfer group. It's all business.
And to learn how to surf. But spoiler alert, and I'm sure everyone sees it coming. Of course, they fall in love.
Of course they do. Yes. Yeah. And the whole relationship starts on a lie. So this does not end well.
You're always waiting for that shoe to drop. Like, when is she going to find out? Yeah. And how is she going to find out? Now, okay.
Yeah.
My biggest issue with the movie, he uses his real name undercover. That makes zero sense. Because even Bodhi is this, like, they call him Bodhisattva, Patrick Swayze's
Bodhisattva.
Character. Yes. He's very spiritual with surfing, and it's a whole, like,
you do know what the Bodhisattva is?
Yes, one seeking awakening. Yes, in Buddhism. Yes, but I just thought that was fun, and it is spiritual to him. It's the experience. He's willing to die for the best ride. I mean, and that's
the duplicity and duality of the character played by Patrick Swayze is something we should dive into at some point. Yes, but let's finish Johnny Utah and his famous college football past, because that's how he actually gets into the group. It's not that he learns surfing from the pretty girl, but he does get an introduction through her. But they're like, hey, you're that football guy.
Well, that's what Patrick
What happened to you, dude?
Says.
And that's, in fact, how he gets into the group, because he can play football. And that's sort of how he's accepted, because this is an elite group of surfers. And there's no way they would let a normie kook who can't surf in their group like this. It doesn't happen. I mean, I've lived that. I've been ostracized by elite surfer groups. It just works that way. It's really high school. So it's because I was decent but not good. I could stay on a board and I could surf a decent wave, but I didn't really know any good tricks. And so I gravitated towards big wave surfing basically because I like longboards, and it plays to my strengths, right? Because I can hold my breath a long time. I'm in good condition. I'm tall, so I can work a longboard, and I'm not afraid of big waves. So that worked for me. And I have a past in like windsurfing and snowboarding. So I had a good basic understanding of what surfing was before I actually tried it. So when I did try it, which is, I had a training partner who was really, really, really hardcore into surfing, who just said, you have to try it, you have to try it, you have to try it. And he was kind of like my Bodhi.
Okay.
Joff, his name was Joff Gearhart. He's listening. Thanks a lot, Joff. You saved my life.
Nice.
And well, I kind of understand the movie. And I love this movie because of that, because I met a lot of people like Patrick Swayze's character, like Bodhi, in real life. And they're all like that. Climbers are a lot like that too.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's an extreme sport. And people who are in extreme sports always are very introspective and philosophical about life and have alternate lifestyles. Have more,
like they don't have a real job.
Immense passion and have a deep understanding of the sport and what they're doing. So you naturally gravitate towards those people. They're the ones talking and everyone's quiet. You know what I mean? So I would always try to get close to these guys because they could teach you stuff, but half the time they don't have time for that. They don't have time for you. So, you have to find some way in. You have to be unique in some way so they, spend some time on you. So that's basically been my 20s.
So, yeah, so they're playing beach football and Johnny kind of tackles, Johnny Utah tackles Bodhi in the water. Like, it's not supposed to be like a tackle. I mean, he went too far and the other players were going to start to like get after him about it. And then that's when Bodhi uncovers that he knows who he is. He's this football star. But therein lies, I have an issue with all of this because granted, this is pre-internet, but clearly Bodhi is capable of finding things out about whoever.
Well, he watched a lot of football, apparently.
Well, he did, but he can, like, I don't buy that these people wouldn't figure out that he's an FBI agent because he uses his real name. Johnny.
How do you find out if someone is in the FBI in 1991?
Say again.
How do you find out if someone is in the FBI in 1991? That's not a public record thing.
I think that this is a plot hole. Like, I think this is a problem because it's you can, just like they followed his career, you can find out from so-and-so before the internet. It's called private detectives. It's all these, there's ways to find out. And it is public record. He went to law school. Now, I mean, you can find out that he's in the FBI.
Yeah. You have to go to some pretty extreme lengths though.
But in every other, have you seen another movie where they use the real name? Like, it doesn't happen.
It makes no sense.
Pseudonym.
It makes no sense. Of course you have a pseudonym.
That's where I'm going with it, is that it was a huge risk that he's just like, he uses
they figured he's new. Who says he actually went to the FBI? Nobody knows that. He's fresh out of the academy.
But they can see that he went. I know. I just don't buy it.
That's not how the movie starts. You see Bodhi surfing, and you see Johnny Utah on a gun range, and they basically juxtapose the two, and they're both good at what they do, and they're on opposite ends. You see,
it just comes up a lot for me. The name thing, I can't let it go.
It bothers you.
It does. It really bothers me.
It doesn't bother me.
You don't use your real name.
Okay.
You're undercover. I don't know. Anyway, that was the biggest thing for me. It was really hard to let go of that. But yes. Yeah, he's a football star that hurt his knee.
Okay, so now we're into the friendship / rivalry of the two main characters, right? Because the girl is not really a factor. She's Bodhi's ex-girlfriend, and he just sort of lets him have her. That's basically what he says. It's like, hey, man, this is my house. Help yourself to anything you want. That's basically what he's saying. And he's basically saying, you can have my girl.
Well, because he's with another girl. That scene was...
Yes, but that's the surfer culture, right?
It was ambiguous in that it was clear they had some sort of a relationship in the past, but we don't know how past. Like,
could have been last week.
Yeah.
They kind of leave that in the middle, and I suspect it was like last week. There was no real official ending. Yeah, like there are no real relationships in that culture. Everybody is just having fun with everybody, and it's a free for all.
Which she's not cool with it. You can tell that she's bothered by that. Basically, Patrick Swayze's saying, what's mine is yours, and he's like, meanwhile, snuggled up with another woman, and Lori Petty's pissed. Yep. You can see it, but then, she gets her man,
and she gets her man, and then she finds out he lied, and she uses his own gun on him. Interesting, but that's
and it was a little heartless. How did you feel about? So we do find out she's used again at the end because Bodhi needs her, so she's kidnapped as an insurance policy.
Yeah, she's not treated well by anyone.
To get away. Well, Johnny initially was like, used her to get in, but then he did fall in love with her. And so because he loves her, that's why the sequence of events at the end works. Bodhi knows that. And so he knows that Johnny won't allow Tyler, as Lori Petty's character, to get hurt. And so he knows that and he uses that. And so I was like, how hard is that heartless, or is he just playing on because he knows Lori Petty won't actually get hurt?
Okay. Hot take. Very hot take. I know we're talking about Patrick Swayze here, and he did play the character differently. But when you look at his actions, Bodhi is a sociopath.
Oh, yeah.
Complete and utter sociopath. And he has all the markings of a cult leader.
Well, they even say it at his party. That's hilarious that you say that, because they're like, or maybe it was Lori Petty's, somebody at the party says, at Bodhi's party, oh, and these are all of his Moonies, which is an actual cult. So they even recognize that it's cultish behavior. Yeah.
Yes. And he's a kind of spiritual religious leader. And and you could tell he's the brains in the operation, and he's the one behind the whole scheme of robbing banks and then moving on, because basically surfing is they're like pro surfers because they're financed by the world's banks. They just occasionally make a withdrawal with weapons. And he has like this pacifist kind of philosophy about it. It's like, oh, we just go in there and we just use shock and awe, basically, and we just sort of goad them into giving the money, but we don't get too greedy. We never go to the vault, blah blah blah. And we're heroes, and we're showing the normal deadbeats in who go to their regular jobs that there is an alternate lifestyle, that you don't have to live that way. We're living the dream, blah blah blah. He's full of shit.
Us against the system. He says it's us against the system.
Yes.
And meanwhile, obviously people who are listening to this have seen the movie, but there's 4 of them, and they dress up like in tuxes or suits, and then they put ex-presidents masks on. So Bodhi is Reagan, and then the other is like
Nixon.
Nixon is the other like main guy, and then it's Carter and LBJ.
Right.
So those are the 4 ex-presidents that they go in as. But yeah, he says it's us against the system. And they even use cute little, it's like funny, they're poking fun at the system, but they'll even say, Dick, like Rick, Dick, you ready? Or,
right. And Dick Nixon leaves the bank saying, I'm not a crook.
Yeah,
which is funny, which is ironic and funny. And it's cute, sort of, except when it stops being cute. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they don't actually hurt people. Spoiler alert, until the end when he does get greedy and they take too long in the vault, and then everybody gets shot.
Yes, but he basically betrays his own principles. And that's when everything goes tits up.
Yep. Because that's his rule.
Because he's obsessed with the 50-year storm.
In Australia.
Right.
And this is something I absolutely didn't remember or didn't catch, when I watched it 30 years ago, was that essentially he was saying it is the type of ride that a true surfer like seeks. It's the ultimate ride that will kill you, because he's like, you have to be ready to die, like in order to catch the ultimate ride.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I get it, because I almost drowned surfing a wave like that. Not that high, but I surfed Waimea, which is where these waves are shot. So Waimea is in Hawaii, and only Hawaiians surf there, and the ultimate elite surfers, because do you know how waves work?
What do you mean? Do I know how waves work?
A wave is created because there's a level difference on the bottom of the ocean. So water moves towards shore tidally, and it hits that piece of land on the bottom, and the water cascades up. And that force of that water, that creates the wave. That creates that curl you see, the rip curl.
Ah, got it. Okay.
So, and it's always around usually islands that have tectonic plates. Because then you have those sharp ridges in the water.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? That's why all the best places to surf are usually around places with volcanoes, or that have had volcanic activity, or that have really sharp bottoms or drops in the sea. Right? The closest we have here is Biarritz, which is on the border between France and Spain. It's the waves are just perfect, creating the perfect rip curl. So that's when you're a surfer, that's what you want. You want the perfect wave. You want those beautiful curling waves. Now, Waimea has those waves, but they're the biggest in the world. They're humongous. We're not
So
even
they
talking
say that.
Yes, they're not as big as a house. They're as big as an apartment building. They're like 30, 40, 50-foot swells. You call it a swell. And that's why they call the big waves at Waimea, they call it a wall, and they call it the mother of all walls.
So they reference Waimea in the movie.
Yes, they do. And they're basically saying the waves in Australia are even bigger than that.
So he's talking about, I forget the beach in Australia that he's talking about, this 50-year storm.
Bells Beach.
Yes.
Which is a real surfing place, just like Bondi Beach and Whale Beach. And those are all places I've surfed. And they're amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I've been
cool.
all over because, well, I like to travel. And when I travel, I do everything I can possibly do in that country. So I dive, I ride horses. Sorry, Katie. I ride horses. I love riding horses. I will never stop riding horses. And I try to surf, and I climb, and I hike, and I run, and whatever you can do.
When in Rome, right?
When in Rome. It's like every country has a sport, and I'm an athlete. So I am good at one sport, and I'm decent at all the others. So I'm a decent surfer. So I surfed everywhere. You just, get a wetsuit, rent a board, try the waves.
Mm-hmm. I
almost drowned.
Die, probably. I
almost drowned because I was obsessed with Waimea because my friend Joff gave me a magazine, and it was like his prized possession, and he gave it to me for my birthday because he said, well, this is a very important magazine I'm giving you. And I'm like, okay. We were like 19, 20. And he was like, well, this is my favorite magazine, and this got me into surfing. So now I want you to have it because it's important. It's like a talisman. I'm like, okay. And it had a picture on it, and it was a guy surfing Waimea. So that was like in my 20s. I was like, one day I'm going to surf Waimea. Whatever happens, when I get to Hawaii, I'm just going to try. So I was fairly confident at that point, and I trained because here's the thing. When you lose the wave, when you fall, which inevitably with those big waves is a big risk, and that could happen, will happen. When you fall, there's going to be another wave because waves go in threes. There's going to be another wave.
Okay.
The next wave, when you fight yourself to the surface again, mid-wave, will hit you within seconds. So you have like seconds to catch your breath, and then the wave pounds on you, and it pushes you down 15 meters at least. And it takes a couple of minutes for that wave to finish pounding you, and then you have to fight your way up.
Yeesh.
So you're underwater from minimum 3 to probably 6 minutes. And if you don't have air in your lungs, you're seaweed.
For sure. Right? 3 minutes is a long time.
It's a long time. And you have to train for it. It can be done, but you have to be in great shape. And you have to be lucky. Now, if you're unlucky and you went down in the wrong part of the wave, another wave is going to come and it's going to hit you. So you have seconds to get your air and then it hits you again, and you have to fight your way back up. So if you're tired from that second wave, that third one's going to kill you. And that's what happened to me. The second wave came earlier than I expected. I was tired. I caught half a lung, and I went down, and it was a real struggle. I mean, I was down there realizing this is it. This is over. I'm gone. I'm dead.
How long ago was this?
I was in my mid-20s. I was 26, I think. Yeah.
So you were even like probably the best shape, like a 20-something.
I was a monster. Then. I was a monster. And
like if you almost died then.
Yes. And I was obsessed with stuff like that. I mean, I skydived and I climbed mountains and I did a lot of stuff. And in retrospect, I realized I did that because I had a major case of PTSD because I was desensitized from my work experiences, and I was just looking to feel something, feel anything to feel alive,
The adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, the adrenaline junkie thing. Yeah. I never really experienced that kind of adrenaline feeling because I was desensitized. And when I jump out of a plane, I was fine. I just love the experience. I mean, it's exhilarating, but I never had that mortal fear that some people have that cause that extreme reaction in your body. Not then. Later, yes, but not then. And I realized in retrospect it was because I was just numb. I was emotionally, physically numb from what I've been through, and I was processing it. And my need for these extreme sports and these extreme reactions basically was just to connect with life again.
Yeah.
And that's why I understood this movie so well, and that's why I love it so much, because they do explain it well. They do explain when you're surfing or you're doing anything in nature that gets you in touch with the elements in such a kinetic, powerful way, because the ocean is just a powerful thing. It gives more meaning to everything you do, and that's something that the Bodhisattva character explains really well.
I think so too. I concur about them explaining it well, because unlike you, I don't have the experience. I'm not a surfer. But particularly, they just talk about basically
you've bodyboarded at some point, right?
Like paddleboard. No, I'm not, like when I go to I'm not an adrenaline junkie.
Okay.
But
have you swum in the sea with a strong tide?
Yes.
Then you have some semblance of what it's like. Of having
the sea is
being a cork in the ocean and having no control whatsoever.
Yes, but the way they explain there's this, it's a connection, it's like a spiritualness to it. And it's especially when they're skydiving, they're like, it's like no drug. It's like better than any drug you could possibly do, as they're,
you're falling to your death.
And
you're falling to your death, and the only thing that's going to save you is like this thin sheet of silk material that's going to kind of slow you down.
Yeah, before you, Well, and one of them even says it's like having sex with the gods, like you're. So it's like, I do think they explain it.
It's a religious experience.
Yeah.
And that's why this Bodhisattva guy has such a hold on his group. He's their spiritual leader into this dangerous realm, and they get that right. They and the cool thing is that two of those guys who were cast were actual real surfers, real ones.
Okay,
professional surfers. You had Burgess Christopher and you had John Philbin, and particularly John Philbin. I idolized him. So he's one of the greatest surfers of all time.
They don't focus on them in the movie though. Like what was the Roach was so it was Bodhi and Roach. They were kind of the two leads.
Sure, the actors.
Nixon and Reagan. Yeah.
Then you had Gromit and Nathaniel.
Yeah.
And Gromit and Nathaniel were the real surfers. And the trick to the whole thing was that all the surfer action you see is mostly close-ups of those guys.
Okay.
Right? And the stuff Patrick Swayze did, because he's a really good surfer, he could do a lot of stuff himself, and his stunt double could do the rest. Right, so they shoot him with as close as possible until the wave caught him, and then his body double would take over. But there's a lot of scenes, there's a lot of shots that they slow down, right? You see in slow motion, because that's as close as they could get with Patrick Swayze actually surfing. Same with the skydiving. There's the scene where he says goodbye and he falls backward out of the plane. That's Patrick Swayze actually skydiving. I mean, the rest of them are on a crane. Patrick wasn't.
There were a few. The skydiving scenes I actually enjoyed more than the surfing scenes.
Sure.
It's just, I don't know if it was just clear to understand as like someone who doesn't do those things often. It was clear to see what's actually happening when they're skydiving as opposed to when they're surfing. And Patrick Swayze's character does like flips and he does like gymnast moves in the air, and that's
he's so athletic.
He's because he's him. He's also. What did you think about a blonde Patrick Swayze? I think
he's a surfer. Inevitably, you're going to be blonde because the seawater bleaches your hair. It bleaches everything.
But even his hair and stuff,
everything.
Like Lori Petty,
beard.
But
everything.
I just thought it was interesting that it was the choice made sense. It's just
if you have hair on your legs, it turns white. Okay. Your pubic hair turns white. Seriously.
Yeah, I'm just not used to seeing him blonde, so I was taken aback a little bit.
Okay.
You know?
Did you like it?
Yeah, I mean, I would watch
You
Patrick
like you
Swayze
some
too.
Patrick Swayze, right?
I love Patrick Swayze. I really do miss him. He's something else. I mean, like what a gem he is.
He was unique, and they don't make him like that anymore.
They do not. Yeah.
And they
Yeah,
never did
so-
before.
Yeah, he's one of a kind. Like
I
you
think the
said.
closest thing to Patrick Swayze is probably Chris Hemsworth, but Chris Hemsworth is a half of Patrick Swayze.
Yeah. I don't know that much about Chris Hemsworth, but anyway.
Well, he's not a dancer.
Wasn't he in why isn't one of them in Magic Mike? So I mean, like a little bit, maybe. Should I make that up? Wasn't
Oh,
one
there you
of
go.
them
I'm not
might have
sure.
made that up.
I'm not a. You're probably more knowledgeable about Magic Mike than I am. Could be.
I
I
could have
think-
made that up. I feel like one of them was in
I
some
think you're
dance
confusing him
movie.
with Matthew McConaughey.
Maybe.
But Patrick
Yeah,
Swayze
maybe.
could have been in Magic Mike, definitely.
It's like kind of a famous skit. So I think our listeners will remember that. Hilarious. But
Okay.
it works. Yeah. Chris Farley and Patrick Swayze together dancing like Chippendales dancers. Hilarious.
I forced one of my best friends to become Chippendale.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was this restaurant place that had Chippendales where they had like bachelorettes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was having trouble with girls. And I was like, well, we can fix that. And he was
Yeah.
like,
you
how?
could
And it's
fix
like,
that
you're
real
gonna
quick.
you're gonna get a job there. And he's like, no, I'm not. He's like, yes, you are, but I'm not. How? And so they'll teach you. All you have to do is dance and be an alpha male. You can't
I
do
would-
either, so they're gonna teach you.
I feel
And he
like
had all
you
the
have to have an
prerequisites.
ounce
I
of
mean, he was a
rhythm to
great looking
begin with.
guy, and he had a great
Yeah.
physique. And and they just sort of trained him. And after that, it was I almost regretted it because I turned him into a monster.
Yeah. Oh, you can't.
I gave him about 5-year
after-
head start on all the guys
Yeah.
his own age.
Funny.
It was.
The other thing that I kind of wondered is so there's these bank robberies, and then so Utah figures it out that these
Mhm.
people that he's infiltrated, so to speak, his
Well, inevitably.
friends.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the first half of the movie, they're basically looking for a tight-knit group in the surfing community that is insane and lethal and dangerous. And so, of course, they find the Nazi surfer bikers led by Anthony Kiedis, and they look perfect for the part. They look like obvious bank robbers. I mean, they look irresponsible, they look insane, whereas the actual bank robberies are very disciplined and very controlled.
Yeah, these are just like they're drug runners and gun runners. But I didn't see this coming. I thought it was a nice little twist that they raided the wrong place
Yes.
and they stepped an agent. Like seems typical too.
Mhm.
One agency, the FBI, steps
Mhm.
on the toes of another agency. So
Mhm.
there was an undercover DEA agent. And he was
Yes,
like, I've
which is
been
also
under- I-
federal. So in reality, I
Yeah.
don't think that actually would work that way, because I think FBI operations are very bureaucratic. I think to have like stuff like that greenlit, you'd have to go up the food chain, and someone would have stopped it. But it's kind of presented as, well, these guys can just sort of freelance because they're not taken seriously.
They are they're a little rogue.
They're
Like
yeah.
Busey and Keanu's characters kind of
Yeah.
do whatever. Like they don't necessarily have permission for every little thing.
No, which is kind of like 80s
Yeah.
cop
I mean, yeah.
filmmaking, right? It's
Yep.
like all cops are like that, and in the movies, not in reality, of course. And that's you can say, well, okay, that's unrealistic, but okay, let's say the FBI approved this, it just got completely botched. I mean, these things happen. I recently watched a YouTube video where a gamer group that lived in a certain house was online gaming. They were reported by someone in that gaming community as being dangerous and threatening, and so the FBI raided that house. As they said, we were swatted, and a SWAT team came in and arrested everybody. A bunch of nerds
Mhm.
video gaming online on YouTube. They were arrested live, and it was violent and brutal, and the SWAT team wouldn't listen. And these people were completely innocent, and some lunatic on the internet had just reported them as being dangerous.
Well, that's what happens with the alpha male mentality. I mean, and you see it a lot. when it's like it turns into like a mob, bunch of like they're not lit. But so I do think that the raid scene was really entertaining. Like
It was.
it lasted way longer than I thought, especially there's a lawnmower involved. And
Yes.
towards the end, Gary Busey comes, but I was
Keanu's
I
pretty
don't know,
face is
they did-
almost messed up with the lawnmower, which was a nice touch. Here's the horror director at work.
oh
right?
yeah. But it was really the raid scene was really well done. I enjoyed it.
It was excellent. I mean, she's good at action. I mean,
Mhm.
there were car chases and foot chases and fights and gunfights, and it was just a very exciting movie.
Indeed. Speaking of the car
And
chases,
there's the sports elements.
and a lot of action.
Yeah.
I'm not even really into action. Like I said, like if it was not Patrick Swayze, I don't know if I would care about this movie so much. You know what I mean? I
Yes,
think
but then
for
again,
me, I need
this
to
is a
weigh
popcorn
in.
movie and it's a date
Mhm.
movie, so there's going to be stuff in it for you. The guys are
Yeah.
going to enjoy the action, and you're going to be enjoying Patrick Swayze.
Yes, what I mean by that is that I am not naturally drawn to action movies.
No,
And so for me, the way in is
it's just part of dinner and the
Whoever-
movie, and then having fun afterwards for you.
whoever's yes. But the reason I am same thing with like half of Sylvester Stallone's movies. Like
Mhm.
I wouldn't care about Cliffhanger if it was not him in it. You know what I mean? Like that's just an example. Is like
Because he's the draw,
meanwhile-
he's the star.
yeah, like for me, it's the person in it, and so that's
Mhm.
why any other random action movie I don't care about because I'm not invested in the actor.
Well, they could have at the time, they could have cast Jean-Claude Van Damme in over Cliffhanger. That would have
Yeah.
worked. I mean, they would have
Yeah.
had half the budget, and they would have set it in France or Italy
Yeah.
instead of the Rockies. But that could have worked. I mean, Jean-Claude Van Damme could have done that part. Wouldn't have been as exciting because Stallone-ified
Right.
it, and it was his last great action movie. But
Yeah, I mean, and I do like Jean-Claude because but so for me, it depends on who the actor is. I would have still seen that movie if Jean-Claude was in it. It wouldn't have been as good, but my point is, my way into these movies is usually if I have some connection with the actor, and so Patrick Swayze
yes, you're sexist that way. If
brings it.
If guys would pick a date movie based on that, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to that movie because I think she's a really hot actress, and then try to take the girl along.
Well-
the night would not end well. Whereas on the other side of the coin, you guys sometimes pick the movie, and then you pick the movie based on, well, I think
Sure.
I think that
I mean, we're
actor is
both-
hot, and I'm going to make you
Sure.
sit through this romantic comedy because that actor is hot, and we're going to be like, okay, well, I'll pay for dinner, and okay, we'll go to the movies, but there better be some fun afterwards then.
No, I get it. We're both, I'm not disagreeing. Like I very much am, I don't know if sexist is the right word, but I'm like, I'm going to, you're like a piece of meat to me,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
meat.
You
I mean, that's-
objectify these actors.
Yes, to some degree. However,
And let's face facts here. You have Keanu Reeves at his prettiest, and you have Patrick
He is.
Swayze in his prime. I mean, if you're going to objectify people, why not objectify these men? They're handsome
Yes,
men.
Keanu, and they do you can tell that it's a woman director too, because there are a few scenes like in the rain, like you can, I'm like,
She knows
this
what
is
she's
Catherine
doing.
Bigelow. Yeah. Like,
I mean, she
Keanu-
fought for Keanu Reeves to be in this movie. She knew,
Did she?
she was like, well, he's perfect.
She knew he was like up and coming, and because he did have a moment with the ladies. But so my point is like, yes, I do find Patrick Swayze very attractive, but if he couldn't act, I wouldn't.
No.
There's a difference.
No.
Same thing with Sylvester Stallone. Like I find him very attractive.
It's like a
He's
pretty
also
blonde, right? It's like, yes,
Yeah.
she's a pretty blonde, but if she's not entertaining or in any way interesting, then, that fades pretty quick.
Exactly. On the other side of the coin, I will say there are some actors that I love, but I don't find them attractive at all. Like Al Pacino. I'll watch almost anything he does. I don't find him attractive at all, but he's just such a great actor.
Well, he was sort of handsome in the 70s.
Not for me. Like
When
not
he was
my
younger. The same with
I'll-
Robert De Niro. He's ugly
Well,
as fuck.
Fan. No, De Niro's hot.
But he was really
Hot.
good looking in the 70s.
He was hot up until not that long ago. Robert De Niro's hot.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
No,
he's he's a double threat in that way. Like he's hot and he's a great actor.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
great actor. I don't knock him for his acting abilities. I mean, he's one of the
Mhm.
greatest of all time. He's in the
Uh-huh.
conversation of being one of the greatest. Sure, sure.
Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I guess so. Sorry, we talked. Big shocker. We went on a tangent, but
They
where I was
always
going,
do.
the running and chasing scenes that you brought up,
Hmm.
I kept wondering when I was watching. So
Hmm.
so there's a point in the movie. Obviously, Keanu realizes that his friend and his surfer community are the bank robbers.
Right.
They're
We're in the
now trying
second
to
half
catch
of the
them.
movie now.
Yes, and there's a car chase. There's a foot chase. And so Keanu knows who he's chasing.
Hmm.
But I kept wondering, I'm like, at what point, I'm like, doesn't Bodhi know that this is him?
Yes.
And it's not until later, there's a specific scene, like way too late, in my opinion, where he gets away. So Keanu, they jump off of like
Hmm.
a fence or something, and Keanu's knee gets hurt, so he can't continue to run. So he
Exactly.
points his gun at him and says, "Stop, or I'll shoot."
Yeah.
But
And he doesn't.
Bodhi doesn't. And there's a long glare through his
Hmm.
mask. He still has his Reagan mask
Yes, because
on.
Bodhi knows he has a hold on him. Bodhi is a sociopath, and he knows when he can control people. And he's
He knew he
confident
wouldn't shoot him.
that he can control Johnny. He's confident that Johnny will never betray him because Johnny is his brother now. Johnny is his surfer bro, right? And Bodhi is convinced that in one way or another, he can pull Johnny's strings. That's why ultimately he knows, well, if I can't get him to stop chasing me this way, I'll just, take his girl. He knows every weakness. He anticipates.
He does know, and he knew, but I guess there was a point he's on the fence about to get away, and that there's a long glaring, and I think as an audience we're supposed to believe that that's the moment that he realizes that it's Johnny.
I don't think so. That's the moment where Bodhi realizes that Johnny isn't really a threat to him, and he says something to that extent to the rest of the group who are afraid and who are run scared, like, let's get out of here. He's like, no, don't worry about it. He's not going to do shit to us. He could have.
Well, that's later. Yeah, that's later.
He could have shot me. He didn't, and he's never going to. And he's right about that throughout the movie,
he is
right up to the end, because basically Johnny is turning into Bodhi. Johnny is becoming less Johnny and is becoming less cop and is becoming less everyman, is turning more and more into surfer bro. The movie doesn't really relate it in this way, but he's kind of drinking Bodhi's Kool-Aid. He's kind of like into the whole surfer thing. And in reality, when you look at cults, that's always how they work. There's an element of reality in it.
Sure.
Where the things they make these cultists go through are very real to them. And on the other hand, there's the spiritual and manipulative side where they just have to sort of follow along. Otherwise, they won't get their cookie.
Well, I do think there was a specific point in the movie where we see that he buys into it, and it's when they go night surfing, and it's just everybody else has left, and it's just Johnny, Utah, and Tyler, Lori Petty's character. And she even alludes, like, she's like, "Oh my God, you almost look happy." Like, you can see that he's like,
yes, she realizes he's becoming a surfer. He's getting it. And
he gets the feeling of what everybody's been talking about.
And he finds himself. And of course, he starts letting go of this tenacious hunter FBI guy in him. Right?
Well, I don't think he lets it go.
And she notices immediately when it's back.
He's conflicted because he's got both inside of him now. And
at the end of the movie, he throws the FBI away. And he's surfer bro. He basically replaces Bodhi. Not as a criminal mastermind, but as a surfer guru.
I thought it was the ending was really spectacular, in my opinion, because it could have gone, there was just a lot of layers to it, in that Bodhi's whole crew dies. In the final scene, he gets greedy.
The ending is an exact juxtaposition, dark mirror image of how the movie starts. The movie starts with Bodhi surfing, and it ends with Bodhi surfing but dying, right? In the start of the movie, Bodhi is alive. as alive as he can be, at one with the ocean. And at the end of the movie, he's disconcerted and he's killed by the perfect storm into
And it's
ultimate freedom.
foreshadowed
Yes,
earlier.
and at
when
the
he's
start of the
talking about
movie,
the 50-year storm.
yes, Johnny Utah is the FBI robot. And at the end of the movie, he's completely disconcerted with that part of his existence. He doesn't even look like himself anymore. He has longer hair. He hasn't shaved. He's been chasing Bodhi for a year, apparently. And he throws his badge away after Bodhi dies doing what he loves.
So, but also kind of layered with that,
Mm-hmm.
very well said. I just wanted to add to that it's Johnny came full circle because in order to save his girl,
mm-hmm.
he has to let Bodhi get away.
Mm-hmm.
The plot is such that he loses his man.
Again,
so to speak.
extremely clever, extremely smart plotting.
Yes.
Excellent.
Saves, so he gets his girl,
mm-hmm.
but he can't let go because he is the dog with he's like a dog with a bone,
mm-hmm.
because he is an FBI agent, even though he also now has this spiritual surfer person inside of him.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure how much time had passed. So Bodhi gets away,
mm-hmm.
and then we meet up. We see him. We meet him. They're now in Australia at
mm-hmm.
what was the name of the beach again? Bell's Beach.
Bell's Beach.
And it's raining. It's a storm, and all the locals, everybody is leaving. And Johnny's kind of asking, "Is there anybody out?" Like he's looking
mm-hmm.
for Bodhi, and they're like, "You've got to be crazy, insane. Nobody's out there. Like it's a crazy storm." But
mm-hmm.
we were foreshadowed that this is Bodhi's ultimate. He kind of has a death wish almost, especially now that everybody's died.
Yeah,
like,
and it's his fault.
Yeah. And he claims he doesn't like violence.
And sociopath that he is, he's obsessed enough with this storm that in his mind, it's probably all worth it.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
because he only gets upset when Johnny basically takes it away from him. They have a fight. He handcuffs Bodhi, and then Bodhi suddenly realizes, I'm not just going to jail. I'm never gonna surf this wave, and this wave is my destiny. This wave is my reason to exist.
Yeah, so
that's
Johnny
when he gets upset.
Arrest him. So Johnny does arrest him. They have a fight on the beach, which is the background that you have behind you, which is perfect. It's raining, obviously, so of course they look great. And then they come up from the water in the fight, and Johnny has somehow miraculously handcuffed them together.
Yeah, he's a go-getter.
So you see all the
symbolism is just off the charts and everything here.
It is, but so
these men are tied together.
That's a good point.
And now the FBI man has caught him. He's tied to this FBI man, and it's basically Bodhi appeals to the surfer in him and says, "You see this? Let me go. Let me leave on my own terms."
He's like, "I
don't
can't
put me in a cage.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah,
don't be in that cage, and don't be in that cage with me." He doesn't say that, but that's actually what he's suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so this cult leader, this spiritual leader, uses all his influence he can muster, convinces his acolyte to let him go, and meets his end.
It's wonderful.
Really, it's a completely ambiguous ending. I'm not so sure it's a happy ending, but it's a great ending. And it's one of the all-time great endings of any movie ever. People talk about Casablanca having a great ending. This is a great ending.
Yeah, it really is. Johnny knows he's going to his death, but nobody else does. They're like, "When's he coming back?" Like, they're like, "Why'd you let him go?" And Johnny's like, because Bodhi doesn't say he's going to go die. He just he's like, "Look, I can't."
No, he's going to surf.
Yeah, but Johnny
he's not planning on dying. And of course, if you want to, you could just build a sequel on that.
I think he does plan on dying. I do think that he does. You could have him survive it, but I think based on what he says at the beginning, it only works because he's been building this 50-year storm up,
right? The
whole movie, and he wants to die. It's his ultimate ride.
And based on my personal experience, you wouldn't survive.
Yeah, and he knows it. Bodhi doesn't say it, but they both know that him going to surf in that storm, he's done. He's going to die.
That's it.
But the all the police and FBI that come rushing in, they're like, "What are you doing? Yeah. When's he coming back?"
Yeah.
He's not coming back.
No.
And then he tosses his, I was not expecting him to toss his badge in the
Yeah.
water. So
Which, by
what
the
do
way,
you
is
think?
I think that's illegal.
Oh, he doesn't
I think
care apparently.
that's highly illegal.
Probably. I mean, he would be. So what do you think? Obviously, and thankfully, there was not a sequel.
No,
But what do you think happens
in a
at the
potential
end?
sequel.
No, like what do you think we're meant to take away from? So he's no longer like what happens the next day?
Well, in my opinion, he's quit the FBI and he becomes Surfer Guru. He becomes Bodhi.
Do you think? Okay.
Yeah. And he
Yeah, it's
just starts
ambiguous
a
enough.
surf shop somewhere and he just surfs every day
With
and smokes
Tyler?
weed every day. And that's going to be the rest of his life. He's an adrenaline junkie and he's going to be
Mhm.
chasing the perfect wave for the rest of his life.
Do you think he and Tyler stay together?
No,
Yeah, I don't think so
no,
either. These movie endings never work, but
no. I don't think
seem
they
to
were
work
even
out.
together while he was chasing Bodhi.
Oh, really?
No,
Okay.
they'd broken up by then.
Okay.
I mean,
I
this
wasn't
woman
sure
is
how much time had passed.
I mean, now, well, almost a year, right? And this woman is traumatized, right? I mean, she's been
That's a good point.
abducted and she's been lied to by every man in her life. And, and all her vulnerabilities have been used against her. No, I don't see a relationship.
She can't trust.
I
Yeah,
see her
yeah.
getting hooked on drugs and ending up in rehab. That's what I see happening.
Realistically, that does make sense.
Yeah. The movie isn't about, and that's one of the reasons I enjoy this movie so much. It's not about the romance. The romance is the MacGuffin.
I agree. I do not like a romantic comedy, so I agree.
Yes, I mean
don't think
there's
that should be the
romance
reason
in
why.
this movie,
Mhm.
but the romance isn't the ultimate goal.
Yep.
It's also not a morality tale. That's also something I really enjoy. There's something more going on with this movie, and it's a movie that you can happily debate
Mhm.
on what it actually is. And in my mind, that's the essence of art. When you don't really know what it is, when you have to discuss and think and argue about what it is, then you've produced art. And Catherine Bigelow has produced a great piece of art, and she should have
Mhm.
gotten an Oscar for this movie. And that's what I found so interesting when I started reading reviews. It's like this movie bombed in the United States. It completely bombed. It
Well, I
made
don't think
it
it
made
tripled
something
its
like
budget.
24 million off $105 million budget. And
No,
if
you
this
were
had been
looking at the
produced
sequel.
Hmm?
You were looking at the remake. Your figures were based on the remake.
No. I checked.
Yeah, look it up. It's 24 million was the budget, and it made 84.
Oh, you
million.
mean the 2015? Yeah. So it basically it broke even in the United States. It made its money overseas.
It tripled its budget overseas,
Yes.
which is not a bomb. But I was shocked.
I'm not saying it was a bomb. I'm saying it was a bomb domestically. I'm saying it barely scratched out a living. And the popularity of this movie is because it's popular overseas. And well, you can argue why. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that surfers have a bad reputation in
I was just
the
going to
United
say.
States.
I was just going to suggest perhaps it could be a number of reasons, but a more worldwide appeal based on there's more surfers in other areas than just
Maybe.
You know what I mean?
But I think it's the appeal of Patrick Swayze, who was way more popular in the rest of the world than he was ever in the United States. Same with Stallone, really. I mean, what has saved Stallone for decades has been his popularity outside of the United States. I mean, he's been blacklisted several times because people were just tired of him. But his popularity outside of the United States just gave him a career. And it's to an extent, same goes for Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze here.
Well, Keanu is somehow super I hear he's a really good guy, so I'm not gonna I hear he's like a really nice guy.
He's amazing.
But he's gotten he's gone on to be super famous.
He's a lot like Bodhi in real life.
Yeah, well, Bill and Ted, that's how we knew him, the dumb valley guy or so anyway, but the Point Break, I think, is one of those movies that for whatever reason didn't do well necessarily in its time.
No, it was panned by the critics. They hated it.
Did they?
Just hated it. And I don't
what did they have issue with? Just
everybody, everything and everybody. It was too
It's
much
an action
action,
movie.
and they
Okay.
hated the fact that it was an action movie, and they found it unrealistic. And well, it's the usual things of the critiques the more notable newspaper critics would have on an action movie. They just hate it because it was
Yeah.
action.
Yeah. Action it's tough.
They
Critics are
they
not
are
favorable.
unable to look beyond it, right?
But don't you think it's become more popular over time? Like Point Break
Absolutely.
is sort of like maybe hasn't attained cult status, but
I think
a
it
lot
has.
of movies aren't
Definitely
like
has.
big.
And here's the thing: you always get these top tens, right? The top 10 best action movies of the 90s,
Uh-huh.
and all of a sudden, maybe in the last 10, 15 years or so, it started popping up in those lists in the United States. Those are always United States lists, right?
Yeah.
Because outside, Point Break has always been popular, and because I remember renting it a bunch of times, and I owned it, and everybody I knew liked it, and it's a universally beloved movie, really.
Yeah,
but
is.
It took a while for Americans to warm up to this one.
Especially now, I think there's like
to get it,
like a nostalgia. Like we want more vintage because movies. It's really hard. Even this movie, it wasn't like an original idea that like
no, not at all.
It's a story that's been told, but it was told in such an interesting way. And
yeah, Catherine Bigelow did really something interesting with it, because originally the script was going to be shot by Ridley Scott, and it fell through.
Oh,
yeah, Ridley would have done.
I didn't know that.
Ridley was supposed to do this, and ironically, I think his brother should have done it. Tony Scott would have made this an awesome movie. This was really a Tony Scott script. It would have had that Top Gun feel.
Mm-hmm.
It would have had that Days of Thunder feel.
Well, I prefer, because it's a little cheese. It's a little too cheese.
Yes, true.
I like how this was not that.
No, and that's where where Catherine Bigelow comes in, and that's why I'm a Bigelow fan based on this movie. I'm not a fan of her later work because I really didn't enjoy Hurt Locker much, because it was, to quote our friend Sean from I Must Break This podcast, disjointed. It didn't make sense to me.
I only saw it once. I can't really remember anything from it. It was just a big movie. I remember it being
and then you have Zero Dark 30, and then you get political, and you have to talk about the hunt for Osama bin Laden, which is, in my opinion, ridiculous, because I don't think we're told the truth about that whole thing in any way.
Well, anyway, we should.
But again, she made this movie about that. Yeah, I know you want to skip over it because American politics are something you don't want to discuss. But she made a very political movie. She was actually highly criticized for it because she focused in on the all the torture they were doing, right? Because the Americans started torturing people after 9/11, not just a little bit, but they just made it.
No, I full on.
Like, we're going to torture people now, and she showed that in detail. Like, this is what waterboarding is like.
Well, she showed. I think the reason those two movies were so they were well received.
Oh yes, she got a ton of awards for it. I mean, because Catherine Bigelow has won everything. Let's put
showing
this
a
out
side
there.
of things that people don't like. Yeah, people don't want to know the truth in a lot of cases. No. And so she was showcasing like this. No, this is really from the perspective of the soldiers, from like, different perspectives.
Well, from the operatives, from the CIA, basically. It's the main character, the main protagonist is a CIA operative, and she's like the key figure in finding, Geronimo. And it is what it is, but it did win her a lot of awards. Same with Hurt Locker. But this movie didn't. And in my opinion, this is the best film she's done in her career.
Well, it just shows that she's always had something.
Wide margin.
Because this was like 25 years prior to those movies.
15.
Between 25 and
10 and 15. Because this was 1991. And
when did Hurt Locker come out? I was thinking it was like...
I think that was 2009.
Okay. So
it was
20
the same year as Inglourious Bastards. Okay. And Zero Dark 30 is from 2012, 13-ish, I think.
So, but quite a bit. There was a pretty big gap of her, like, when I was looking through her filmography, she didn't get the accolades until those movies. But this movie being so much earlier, just kind of, I think to your point, just shows us that she was always a talent and it just needed air time, whatever.
This was the second classic movie she made. I mean, Near Dark is amazing. And it's the same with Point Break. It's a fantastic movie. It's incredible art. And from a person you wouldn't expect it from. Right? Because here's this statuesque, beautiful woman who's just the wife of Hollywood mogul in terms of James Cameron. You don't expect a person like that who gets a kind of, well, let's face it, it's kind of she was kind of a trophy wife when you think about it, but in reality, she wasn't. In reality,
she got a chance. I mean, that helped her being married to, like, she probably got a chance if
she gets a leg up and she gets contacts and she got a budget and probably took notes. But this is a woman with a clear artistic vision. Sure. And you can tell from all her movies. And this stuff is just amazing. And I mean, you can say, well, you know, she's the first woman for this and the first woman for that. And that's why she got that award. Maybe, arguably, at least the Oscar. But she did win everything else except the Palme d'Or. Why she didn't win that, I don't know. But she's won everything else. If you look at what you could possibly win as a director, she's won every major award there is. Every one of them.
That's pretty awesome.
That's awesome. That's incredible. Yeah. And that puts her on the map. And that's why she's saying, well, you know, I don't want to be recognized for being the first woman of everything. She wants to be recognized for what she is, a great director. And she is.
Yeah. Now, watching this, like, there wasn't, now I'm not like an expert in stunts or, you know, anything like that. There was nothing about watching this movie that is 30 years old that I thought was like lacking in quality because it was made 30, meaning their budget was tiny. But I thought that all the shots
and what they had, they
stunts,
spent on the action. They spent on the stunts. They spent on everything, looking as realistic as it possibly could.
It looked great. I had no. Fantastic. I mean, I don't know if
the surfing looked great. The skydiving looked great. Yeah. The car chases look great. Everything in this movie is spot on. Yeah. There's no glaring flaw in anything.
Which doesn't that make you wonder, these movies with like gigantic budgets? Like, are you wasting a bunch of money on stuff? Because this movie had $24 million.
They wasted on catering and they wasted on on renting shit they don't need and bigger trailers and overpaying each other. And most of it, I think, is just graft that just disappears and just ends up in the marketing budget for marketing you don't really need.
So I thought for the budget, especially knowing the budget and that it was a long time ago, I really thought that visually it looked good.
Fantastic. Cinematography is beautiful. And I looked into the cinematographer. It's Donald Peterman. I mean, he did Flashdance. He did Men in Black. He did my favorite Star Trek movie, Star Trek: A Voyage Home. And those are all, wonderfully shot movies. So this is, there's just so much talent in this film.
I did note something. This is a Friends reference, fair warning. The guy who plays Bodhi's like right-hand man, Roach, I think is his name. He's Nixon, like he wears the Nixon mask. Let me see. I'm on IMDb. What was his name? Oh, James LeGros or James LeGros. I'm not sure how it's pronounced.
Sure.
I recognized him from one random Friends episode where Phoebe goes on a blind date with him. Whatever his name is in the show. And he's like awful. Like he's like a total D-bag. And she's already like, oh, God, get me out of here. And so then he says that he has a PhD. And so now she's like, oh, okay, really? And he's like, yeah, pretty huge D, so he's a total D-bag. But that was literally that. He's like a one-off, one scene character from Friends. Did you ever watch Friends? Do you remember that episode?
I vaguely remember the episode. I've watched all of Friends multiple times.
But yeah,
I actually watched all episodes in over a time span of a couple of days in Laos.
Really?
Yes,
that's a lot of episodes.
I think you've been to Laos, right?
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. So there's this town called Phang Vieng, and in Phang Vieng you have a tourist hostel, and it's called Friends, and
Oh,
they
really?
have TV screens all over the place, and they play Friends 24/7. So
And
you
it's
just
called Friends. That's
and it's called
hilarious.
Friends, and you just hang out there, and they just play all the
Friends.
episodes of
Yeah.
every season nonstop all the time. So it's like every half hour you get the song. And it's
Oh
like
my
it's
God.
this amazing atmosphere, and it's like one of the craziest places in the world. And but then again, we were sleeping there, so we just got Friends 24/7 for the entire time we were there. It
That's
was
a
great.
lot. But yeah, good
So
show.
that's
It's a
like my
happy,
favorite
yeah,
Friends memory, really.
that's funny. That's a
Mm.
good one. The only other thing I can think of, but I don't think we talked about, was the the second skydiving scene, like towards the end when Bodhi's
Hmm.
trying to get away.
Hmm.
The ultimate game of chicken
Right.
that they play. I I don't know how realistic this is, and it's
It
fine because it's
isn't.
a movie.
It isn't, but
But
it's fun.
Keanu jumps out of the plane
Yeah,
with
that's
no
him.
pack on to
Right.
try and assuming he'll catch up with Bodhi.
Yeah,
Nuts.
it's
And then
nuts.
he won't, because he's got a gun in one hand and he's holding
Hmm.
onto him with the other. And Bodhi's like, if you want to live, you have to let go of the gun and pull the ripcord.
Hmm.
Otherwise, we're both going to die.
Yeah,
Bodhi doesn't care. He's willing to die. He doesn't care.
it's so
But
clever.
ultimate game of chicken, right?
Right. And fits
Yeah.
in perfectly with these two characters. And that's the story they keep telling the entire movie. It's really about the relationship with these two men.
Hmm.
It's this intense friendship they have. This is the
It is
ultimate bro movie.
the idea, and I kind of am a sucker for it. That's why the story's been told so many times. The
Hmm.
FBI agent or the whatever, the undercover agent of whatever agency
Yes.
gets in too deep, so to speak, with whoever they're trying to infiltrate.
Yes.
I'm a sucker for that. I will watch it all day, every day.
I think it's highly realistic. I know a bunch of cops, and I know some of them who've gone undercover. And once you're in it for a few years, posing as a criminal, um, you're not seeing your family. You're not in your regular life. It messes with your head.
Hmm. Yeah, I've read a lot
And
of
these
books about
men,
agents. Yeah.
they have handlers, and they're supposed to pull them out. But then again, there's also the, well, you invested this much time in getting these guys, and we're so close. And
That's
yeah,
always it. We're so close.
yeah.
We're just this close.
Well, and I think in that case, art imitates life instead of life imitating art.
Hmm. Additionally, the other thought, I guess, is that I'm sure there are some, I can't think off the top of my head of another movie where Patrick Swayze plays the bad guy. And technically, he's not all bad. So that's why we kind of
No,
like
he's
him.
ambiguous. I
But
mean, they don't really vilify him, even though
right.
it's his mastermind that creates all this, death and mayhem.
Yes, he's responsible for it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
But you forgive him because he's one,
Mhm.
Patrick Swayze, and two,
Yeah,
the person he is in the story is this beautiful person. Well, he really
yeah.
isn't. But
Hmm.
they choose to portray him as almost benevolent,
Hmm.
which is very interesting. And that's one of the reasons I like this movie so much, because it's so 90s, where everything was turned on its ear, where
Hmm.
we got this kind of nihilistic counterculture. So that's, again, it's a big part of my youth, this film, that touched me in many ways and galvanized me towards certain things. And yeah, no, it's I consider this one of the best action movies of the 90s, if not the best, and one of the best movies of all time.
Interesting. I'm glad that you mentioned. I probably wouldn't have just like someday sitting like some
But all I
Sunday.
had to say, let's do Point Break, and you said, oh, Patrick Swayze in it, I want it.
Mhm. And I knew Keanu would be like I remember really liking Keanu around the time he was in Speed a few years later.
Yes.
But I wouldn't have otherwise, just like if I'm on
Yeah,
a Sunday,
Speed is
like,
just
what
Johnny
movie should I
Utah
watch?
on a bus.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, it's true, but he's a little older and a little more handsome. It takes him a while to grow into his looks, but
Sure. But he's
good
basically
movie,
playing the
great
same character.
He is. Yeah. But
And to be honest, Speed is really Sandra Bullock. She
mhm,
makes that movie.
for sure. Yeah, Keanu, I don't know if he still is because I don't watch like The Matrix or John Wick movies. Like I
Really?
haven't seen those.
Why not?
That kind
The
of thing
original
doesn't, like,
Matrix is awesome.
I know, I
And
believe you
John
guys,
Wick
and
is amazing and awesome.
that genre doesn't.
There's only one scene in John Wick you have to skip. And as
When
long
they
as you skip
kill the
that, you will
dog,
enjoy
probably.
that movie immensely.
That I understand kind of
No,
what
you will
they're
hate it.
generally about.
I mean, that's the
The impetus of the character, as I understand. I don't want to watch.
Not really.
No?
Because John Wick is a classic revenge movie, but
Mhm.
the dog symbolizes the grief
Okay.
the main character has over losing his wife. And it's the symbol that is being trodden on that brings him back to his former life that he's escaped.
Okay.
And that's basically the gist of the movie. But they could have done that better because, I don't care that it's an important scene in that movie. I don't want to see John Wick ever again because of that scene.
Yeah, there are some,
but because it's not there in the second and third, and so it doesn't have the emotional resonance that the original has because of it. So I understand emotionally and artistically why that scene has to be in there, but it's one of the most horrific scenes of any movie I've ever seen, and I never want to see it again. Ever.
No, I'm not gonna watch it.
Because I love me some dogs, and that's not how you treat a pooch.
No, can't do it. But
they must die.
This is an example of. So I don't dislike Keanu, but I don't like. If there was a different actor in those roles, I probably would watch those movies because they're not. The movie itself is not my jam, and so that's why I haven't watched them. Like I don't like Keanu enough to be like, oh, I don't really care what this movie's about. I want to watch him. That's an example of like if it was
you could
else
put Jason Statham in those movies and they would be just as effective, really.
But again, I don't really care that much about Jason Statham either. So that's like for me to watch a movie that's outside of my
Matthew
genre,
McConaughey or
somebody. Yeah, I don't know. I can't.
Anybody.
But I was going to ask because Keanu has gone on to have quite a career, and he is like known to be a cool dude, like a nice guy, but he has not historically been known to be a good actor. How's his acting in those newer movies like Matrix and John Wick and those movies? Is he better? Has he gotten better?
He's less stone surfer dude, yes.
Okay.
That's kind of, but I've seen him in a lot of stuff where he plays because I've seen like there's Knock Knock, for example. He plays a very different part in that, and
he's fine. He's not like a standout. He's not
great. He's fine.
He's fine. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm glad. I wouldn't have chosen, like, it wouldn't have just occurred to me to watch Point Break, but it is really good. So I do encourage people to go back and give it a rewatch.
It fits perfectly in with our network.
It's really,
and I am very big on bringing better movies to our network because I do understand that we have, Stallone loving listeners, and I love me some Stallone. I'm always criticized for being too critical. I know, but he's not the best actor, even though we want him to be. And he's not in the best movies, even though we want him to be.
But very few people, I think people would be hard pressed to find an actor that has only had winners. Everybody has some.
He's had
everybody
two.
Has some. Everybody has had some paycheck movies, but
he's had two great movies, which is more than most people get.
He's a really good actor. Like he really is a good actor.
We shall agree to disagree.
I'm on a show called One More Round. We just
discussed the acting abilities of Keanu Reeves. I think they're on par, really.
Yeah.
Because I think Keanu Reeves, much like Stallone, is always Keanu Reeves, just like Stallone is always Stallone. He's Stallone in that part, except for Rocky. Because Rocky is Rocky, and Rocky is definitely not Stallone.
Exactly. So because I'm on a show about Rocky, and I literally had tears in my eyes when we were covering the scene we were just watching, the scene that we covered this morning. He
Really?
is so good.
What remind me, what scene was that?
When he wants to fight again. We're on Rocky 2. He wants to fight
Right.
again.
And Mickey proves to him that, he just doesn't cut it anymore.
You got the heart, but you don't have the tools anymore.
Right.
You've got to understand that it's over, kid.
Mm-hmm.
And
that Stallone in continuity completely forgets about in the rest of his movies. That I think just goes away.
Well, yeah, we do talk about that. We're not sycophants, and we do talk about the problems, but particularly in the first two, it's so good. Like, his acting is so good. I mean,
he still cared.
He's choking back tears.
In the 70s, he still cared a lot. Of course he did.
So
it's the start of his career, so he had to care.
So I will always come to his defense that he is actually a really good actor.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
You're a Stallone person.
He's got muscles and brains.
I never said he didn't. I never said otherwise. It's my main complaint has been how he's used it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I think, a lot of,
I will never forgive him for Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, ever.
I love Robert De Niro, but he does these kid movies now.
Ugh.
Like, what is that?
I saw Dirty Grandpa the other day, and I was like, why am I watching this?
Or is that what it's called? Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Was it Dirty Grandpa? Something like that. It was
something
awful.
Grandpa.
And then
Grandpa's in the name of
he's in a lot of
like the Meet the Fockers and stuff, which is actually kind of funny, but he's gone a little too much. But I think he will even admit, like, I'm
paycheck movies.
I'm old. I'm doing this there's only so much longer I can do this, and
because I watched him in the Irishman, and it was great.
Yeah, he'll bring it for Scorsese.
Of course he does.
Mm-hmm.
And there you have it. Okay, I love this movie. I really, truly love this movie. It's one of my favorites, and I am very, very, very happy that you got it and that you enjoyed watching it again, and so that we could podcast about it. So it's one of the reasons I enjoy podcasting with you so much.
Yeah, you bring up good ones like that I wouldn't think of. I forget exist That's
half the fun. And like I said, that's one of the things I want to just bring to the network. Just, see if we can, dust off some old classics and talk about them and enjoy them again. Because in the current age, there's so very little to enjoy. So why not look back and look at all that good stuff again and enjoy it for what it is again, especially this movie. It's brilliant.
Well said.
Thank you. And with that, I bid all of you adieu, and we'll see you all next time, because Katie and I will podcast again. And the next time she gets to choose.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. Go watch Point Break again and listen to one more round. Pretty good. If you like Stallone, you like it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.